There are some ideas that feel strange, and then there are ideas that feel like they should not exist at all. Quantum immortality is one of those ideas. Because the first time you hear it, your brain does something very specific. It freezes. Not because the words are complicated, but because the meaning feels wrong. The idea sounds like this. What if, from your own point of view, you never actually experience your own death? What if reality always continues in the version where you survive? And what if the thing that makes this idea so disturbing is not whether it's true, but the fact that some people can't stop thinking about it once they hear it? Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're talking about one of the strangest thought experiments ever connected to physics, consciousness, and existence. Not a proven fact, not a secret law of the universe. A thought experiment. A deeply unsettling one. And the reason it gets under people's skin is because it takes two things humans already struggle with, death and uncertainty, and ties them together in a way that feels almost illegal. So let's slow it down. What is quantum immortality? Where did it come from? Does quantum physics actually support it? And why does this idea scare intelligent, rational people so much? To understand quantum immortality, we first have to step into one of the strangest parts of modern science, quantum mechanics. Now, quantum mechanics is the branch of physics that describes nature at the level of tiny particles. Electrons, photons, atoms, and all the weird behavior they show when you try to measure them. And the important thing here is not the math, it's the weirdness. Because quantum mechanics does not behave like common sense. A particle can exist in a spread of possibilities until a measurement happens. This is the part that led to famous ideas like Schrödinger's cat, where a cat in a sealed box is described as being in a strange quantum superposition until the system is measured. And once physicists started trying to explain what all that really means, they ran into a problem. How do you interpret the math? Because the equations work incredibly well. But what the equations mean about reality is still debated. One of the most famous interpretations is called the many worlds interpretation. And in very simple language, many worlds says this: instead of one outcome becoming real and the others disappearing, all possible outcomes continue, each in its own branch of reality. Now, pause there, because this is where things start getting dangerous in the mind. If every possible outcome continues somewhere, then what happens to you in a situation where one outcome is survival and another is death? And this is where the thought experiment called quantum suicide enters the picture. It's often associated with physicist Max Tegmark, who helped popularize it in the 1990s. And this is the part where I need to be very clear. We are not talking about anything to try, test, imitate, or treat as real-life advice. We are talking about a philosophical thought experiment tied to one interpretation of quantum mechanics. Nothing more. The thought experiment asks a disturbing question. If conscious experience only continues in branches where you remain conscious, would it feel, from your own perspective, as if you always continue? That idea is what people call quantum immortality. Not immortality in the fantasy sense, not your body lives forever, but the subjective idea that consciousness never finds itself in the branch where it ends. And the reason people get obsessed with this is simple. It hijacks the deepest question a human being can ask. What is it like to not exist? Now here's where the theory starts to look less like revelation and more like a psychological trap. Because the more seriously you think about it, the more problems appear. First, many worlds itself is an interpretation, not settled fact. It is a serious and influential interpretation of quantum mechanics, yes. But it is not proven in the way people casually on the internet often pretend. Second, even if many worlds were correct, That does not automatically mean quantum immortality follows in the way people imagine. In fact, critics have explicitly argued that many worlds does not imply guaranteed personal survival, and that the popular quantum immortality conclusion rests on a mistake about probability, identity, and observer experience. And this is where the whole thing becomes more interesting, because quantum immortality is not scary because it's good science. It's scary because it exploits a weakness in the human mind. Our inability to picture our own absence. You can imagine your funeral. You can imagine the world after you. You can imagine people speaking about you. But you cannot truly imagine your own non-experience from the inside. And quantum immortality sneaks into that gap. It says, maybe you never have to. Maybe consciousness always finds itself in the surviving branch. And even if that sounds ridiculous, your brain still reacts. Because the sentence is not just scientific. It's existential. It collides with fear. It collides with ego. It collides with that very human instinct that wants to believe that somehow, in some strange way, the story keeps going. Now let's talk about why people hear this and become deeply uncomfortable. The first reason is obvious. It messes with death. Most ideas about death are tragic, spiritual, religious, or biological. Quantum immortality makes death feel procedural. Like reality is branching behind the scenes and your awareness slips into whichever thread keeps going. That is a horrifying image because it makes existence feel less like a life and more like a strange filter. The second reason it scares people is that it creates a problem with identity. If many branches exist and many versions of you exist, then which one is really you? Is continuity of memory enough? Is continuity of body enough? If another version of you continues in some branch, is that still you, or just a copy that feels like you? This is one of the biggest philosophical weaknesses in the whole idea, because quantum immortality often sneaks in a hidden assumption, that a future conscious version of you in some branch automatically counts as your survival. But that is exactly what many philosophers and critics do not grant. In other words, the theory feels comforting or terrifying only if you accept a very slippery idea of identity. And most people have never thought carefully about identity until a weird theory like this forces them to. The third reason it scares people is more emotional than scientific. It turns survival into something lonely. Because if the idea were true in the dramatic way people imagine, then the branches where you survive might become stranger and stranger, less likely, less normal, more isolated. And that means the fantasy of never dying starts to feel less like a gift and more like being trapped in the longest possible hallway. Still here, still conscious, still moving, but not necessarily in a world that still feels like home. And that is where quantum immortality stops being a science conversation and becomes horror. Not horror with monsters. Horror with continuation. Because most people don't actually want infinite survival at any cost. They want meaning. They want love. They want normality. They want a life that feels human. A theory that says, maybe you continue, is not comforting if the price of continuation is reality becoming thinner, stranger, and more detached from everything familiar. That's why this topic stays in people's heads, because it sounds at first like a cheat code, then like a paradox, then like a curse. Now let's be honest about the science again. Quantum immortality is not experimentally established. It is not a medical idea. It is not a survival theory. It is not a prediction physicists generally rely on to describe real-world human experience. It is a speculative thought experiment built on top of an already debated interpretation of quantum mechanics. And many critics argue that once you look carefully at probability, anthropic reasoning, and personal identity, the whole thing becomes much weaker than internet discussions make it sound. So if the science is shaky, why does the idea survive? Because it gives people something modern life rarely gives them. A way to talk about death without using religion. That's part of its power. Quantum immortality sounds like a scientific doorway into one of the oldest human obsessions: continuation, persistence, some version of I am still here. And for people who are drawn to science but still haunted by mortality, it becomes irresistible. Not because it's proven, but because it feels like a forbidden sentence. Now let's go even deeper. There's another reason this theory gets under the skin. It changes how you look at coincidence, survival, and close calls. Once someone learns about quantum immortality, they can start mentally rewriting every strange near miss, every event where something almost went wrong, every moment where they think, I shouldn't have made it through that. And suddenly the theory becomes sticky, because the brain loves patterns, and the human brain especially loves patterns that make its own continued existence feel meaningful. That does not mean the theory is right. It means the human mind is very good at feeding itself stories that protect it from the abyss. And this is where I think the most honest conclusion lives. Quantum immortality is not mainly interesting as physics. It's interesting as a mirror. It reveals how badly human beings want reality to contain some hidden exception for us. Some loophole, some backup path, some secret clause in the universe that says, you don't have to face the same ending everything else faces. But the universe has never shown us that clause. What it has shown us is uncertainty. And maybe that's why this theory is so effective. Because it dresses uncertainty in the clothes of survival. And for a moment, the mind relaxes, then panics. Now I want to say something important. Even if quantum immortality were somehow philosophically coherent, it would not turn life into a joke. It would do the opposite. It would make every moment heavier. Because if conscious experience is rare, fragile, and difficult to understand, then existence becomes even stranger than we thought. And if the theory is false, then it still teaches us something useful. That the fear of death makes people invent extraordinary frameworks just to avoid staring directly at silence. Either way, the theory tells us something about ourselves. Not just about quantum mechanics. About us. About our refusal to disappear quietly in our own imagination. About the part of us that wants science to become myth. About the part of us that hears one weird idea and immediately asks, but what if it's true? And that question, what if it's true, is the real engine of this whole topic. Not because the answer is yes, but because the question exposes exactly where our fear lives. So what is quantum immortality? The safest, cleanest answer is this. It is a speculative thought experiment connected to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, suggesting that from a first-person perspective, conscious experience might only continue along branches where consciousness survives. And why does it scare people so much? Because it takes the thing we least understand, consciousness, and the thing we least control, death, and fuses them into one impossible sentence. And once that sentence enters your mind, it doesn't leave easily. Not because it's proven, but because it's personal. And that may be the most unsettling thing of all. The scariest theories are not always the ones that are true. Sometimes they're the ones that reveal what we were already terrified of before the theory ever arrived. And there you have it. Quantum immortality is not a scientific fact. It is not a promise. It is not a secret law of the universe. It is a thought experiment. A disturbing one. A fascinating one. And maybe the reason people keep returning to it is because it sits exactly where science ends and fear begins. Thank you all for watching. If you want more videos like this, the ones that make you stop, stare, and rethink what reality even is. Subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what idea disturbed you more, the theory itself, or the fact that part of you wanted it to be true?